ثناء مع روح الحسين في الله. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الذين بذلوا مهجهم دون الحق لتكون كلمة الله العليا وحبا في خلق الله. Respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
We're in the night of Tasu'a, the 9th night of Muharram. We do dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the tawfiq to get the benefit and the understanding and the comprehension of these nights of Ashura as we commemorate them. And that Allah grants us to be sincere, and with that understanding and sincerity, that we are able to do the same mission, nakun ala darbil Husayn wa ashabil Husayn, that we be on the path of Al-Husayn and his companions, inshallah. So on this 9th night of Tasu'a, perhaps to reflect on what we may often have heard about the people of Kufa. The people who are said to have invited Al-Imam Al-Husayn alayhi salam, but they deserted him. They left him alone. They did not come to assist him, to give him succor, and to stand with him in his just and righteous cause. In fact, more than that, the same people we often hear who called Imam al-Husayn, who invited him, not only did not help him, but were actually part of those who killed him. To put it in a more crude way, those who called al-Husayn to Kufa were Shia. They called him to Kufa, you often hear. They neglected him, they deserted him, and they also killed him. So we commemorate Ashura. Of course, all Muslims, Ashura means something, except for the Nawasib, those people who hate the Ahlul Bayt, and they are few. But all Muslims have a love for Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam. Of course, for Shia, for us as Shia, it has a more special meaning because it's emotional and it's linked with so many other things. It's linked to the whole concept of Imama. So we commemorate Ashura. We cry, we are deeply distraught. And we have different forms of mourning. Some of us just cry. Some of us beat our chest lightly or a bit more harder or with hard strikes. Some of us use things that will let blood come from us. And all that is love for Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam. Whether we just use our hands or just our tears, we suffice with that. Or we even use a blade. All that stems from a deep love for Imam al-Husayn and to show solidarity, that emotions that arise from the heart. That's especially what we do as Shia. We commemorate Ashura, we cry, we express our love, we declare our allegiance and loyalty, say Ya Aba Abdullah and all those things. But we are accused of crying crocodile tears. We Shias, as I said, we invited al-Husayn, we deserted him, starting already with Muslim ibn Aqil. We then turned our backs, and some of us, the very Shia who called him, killed him. Those who killed him, they were Shia. So why are we crying? And why are we commemorating a Shia then? Are these just tears? In psychology, is it our guilt feeling? And a guilt that seems not to go away, that gets stronger in fact? Now, over 1,400 years, we see when people go to Iraq, to Karbala, to Arba'in, all these people, is it the result of guilt that will live there forever for having deserted Al-Hussein and even killed him? So these sources apparently speak, including some Shi'i sources, will say this about some of these Shi'i. So we may just go, just to give you, when Zainab al-Hawra, or before I come to that, so Shi'is at best are fickle. We are fickle people. That's at best. Stupid, superfluous. In fact, that is Al-Ghazali, the famous scholar who died in the year 511, Al-Imam Al-Ghazali. You've all heard about him, this great scholar held up especially within the Sunni circles. Indeed, he was a great Shafi'i scholar, was from Iran. He was from nearby where Mashhad is today, when Iran was still majority Sunni, most people. So he describes, he says, the Shias are the most gullible people. That's how he speaks about them. And therefore all these other sects can always convince them to do the wrong thing. Because he says at best they are gullible. That is at best how Shi'is are. And at worst they are treacherous. Any which way, they then cry. Because they have this guilt feelings. I've called you, I've asked you to come. When you come, I deserted you. I was in fact part of those hurting you. And therefore I cry. So it goes. So the sources, for example, some of the sources that we read, Zainab al-Hawra reads, Amma ba'd ya ahl al-Kufa. When she comes into Kufa, she says, O people of Kufa, ya ahl al-makr wal-ghadr wal-khuyala. O you people of makr, of deception, of ghadr, of treachery, of khuyala, of arrogance, she says. فَإِنَّ أَهَلَ بَيْتِ إِبْتَلَى فَإِنَّ أَهَلَ بَيْتٍ we, she says, for our household, إِبْتَلَانَ اللَّهُ بِكُمْ Allah tested us with you. وَإِبْتَلَاكُمْ بِنَا and Allah tested you through us. فَجَعَلَ بَلَاءَنَا حَسَنًا Allah made our test, Ahlul Bayt, a good one, حَسَنًا. وَجَعَلَ أَلَمَهُ عِنْدَنَا He made his flag, the sign of Allah with us. وَفَهْمَهُ لَدَيْنَا and to understand this message. فَنَحْنُ عِيبَةُ عِلْمِهِ we are the people who carry this knowledge and this flag of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Akramana, Allah gave us karama, He honored us. And He gave us preference by Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Over many others, He says, فَكَذَّبْتُمُونَ you belied us, you people of Kufa. وَرَأَيْتُمْ قِتَالَنَا حَلَالًا you saw our fighting as something halal. وَأَمْوَالَنَا نَهَبًا and that our money, our wealth can be plundered by you. كَأَنَّا أَوْلَا تُرْكْ أَوْ Kabul as if we are the children of Turks or we come from Kabul. Afghanistan was known that time also. فَلَا تَدْعُوَنَّ أَنفُسَكُمْ إِلَى جَذْلِ says, do not leave yourselves, to your bima asabtan. Don't let yourself now cry. Don't come and show hearts or, or empathy because of what? Because what you have taken from our blood. وَنَالَتْ and your hands have taken hold of our wealth, etc. فَكَأَنَّ الْعَذَابْ قَدْ حَلَّ بِكُمْ it is because as the punishment has come to you. And she says, أَلَا لَعْنَةُ اللَّهِ عَلَى الظَّالِمِينَ Further she says, and she goes on, it's a long set, it's recorded in Shi'i source, I'm reading from a Shi'i source, it's a secondary Shi'i source, but it's found in all the sources. She speaks she says, what you have done to Ali bin Abi Talib and his children. And then she goes further and she says, you have taken your vows. تَتَّخِذُونَ أَيْمَانَكُمْ you've taken a vow, you swear Allah, and you says yameen by Allah, دَخَلًا بَيْنَكُمْ as a way of cheap gain among yourself. أَلَا وَهَلْ فِيكُمْ إِلَّا الصِّلْفِ there is no one but despicable among you. وَالطَّنْفِ she says, and fasad, bad, wrong. وَالشَّنَفِ and bad akhlaq, and that you detest all which is right. And she goes on, like Kulthum, so there's no time to go into this. This is what Sayyidah Zainab says. And many of them who thus comprise the Shia. So we have what is now today called the story of Kufa. The other night we listened to a ma'atam that exactly blames Ahlul Kufa. Ya Kufi, ya Kufi, ya Kufi, you are treacherous. You must remember that is what they speak about your Kufa. And from there we have this essentialized. Essentialized means when I say somebody they can't change. That's the essence. The essence of a knife is to cut, right? The knife can't say, I'm no more going to cut, I'm going to school tomorrow. That's the essence of a knife. A cheetah's essence or a lion's essence is to hunt. It's a predator. A cheetah is the fastest animal, right? As we know, land animal. But 9 out of 10 times a cheetah fails to catch its prey. The cheetah can't say, stuff it, I'm becoming a vegetarian. The cheetah's essence is that. Now, this what means essence. You can't change. As they say, a leopard never changes its spots. So the Shia are. They can do what they like. So the Shia and the people of Kufa, more specifically among the Shia, the people of Kufa are essentialized. They are either gullible or they are treacherous. And therefore, when it comes to Muharram, we cry. But we can't change our nature because we are treacherous. Now the question is, how do we engage with this story? With the story of Kufa? That even many Shi'is have come just to believe and accept about the people of Kufa. The people of Kufa are fickle. Many of us have just accepted it like that. How do we problematize the story? Perhaps there are 2 ways of problematizing, means saying that we reflect a bit more to question some of these stories. So we do it through the sources. So even this source, every Shi'i would believe that Zainab al-Hawra said this. Because it's a source, it's in a book, isn't it? The speech of Zainab alayha salam is very famous. Every Shi'i knows that when she came into Kufa, we know what she said to Ubaidullah, we know what she said to Ziyad, or rather we read what she said to Ziyad. You know, how she showed a resistance as a person who believed in Allah. What she said to Yazid, but also what she said to the people of Kufa. But when they say the people of Kufa, they mean the Shia. These treacherous Shia who just claim that they love the Ahlul Bayt. Over history, up till today. So all of us here, we are Shia, but really we are treacherous people. You can't trust us. Because we've essentialized this picture of the people of Kufa. So how do we problematize it? By looking at the sources. And this is what we call history. What's history? You know, when you study school a subject, what is history? What happened in 1652? Jan van Riebeeck came to South Africa. 1860, the American Civil War. 1914, World War I. 1948, apartheid is declared. 1990, this is history. That's what happened. That's what we see. But how do we know about events if we were not there? We read them, isn't it? We go to books, we read Toynbee, we read At-Tabari, we read Muslim historians, etc. But is that history as history really happened? What rather we have, it is called historiography. The difference being, that is the writing of history. It is people who wrote history. That's the one way to problematize. So even if we know this very famous source to Zainab al-Hawra, we must ask, but why was this written? And I'll come back to that point. The second point is to look and to problematize all how the people of Kufa are presented, and therefore the Shia throughout history, is to look at theology as a discourse. I'll come back to what I mean with these terms, or the psychology behind it. Who wrote history? Who wrote this work? Many of this, even the source that Shias are using, many of these were written by Sunni historians or also Shia historians. Al-Mas'udi, for example, the famous Al-Mas'udi was a Shia historian. He comes from the lineage of the Sahabi, Abdullah bin Mas'ud. That's why it's called Al-Mas'udi. But it doesn't even matter who wrote it, whether they were Sunni or Shia. That matters least. Not even a problem. So I'm asking this question, people say, if you say it's a Sunni, then it means it's wrong. As a Shia, I can just dismiss it. No. That will be too superficial to say, I dismiss it because a Sunni wrote. I can even have a Shia scholar and say that I need to question it. Whenever people write history, they are called historians. They have a motive to write. Now the motive, when we hear the word motive, we seem bad. No. Every historian writes with a motive. Otherwise, why are you writing? You got to aim. And how people write, that is, when we read a text, we must not only look for what is mentioned, but also what is not mentioned. So, a particular historian, a person called A, will be historian. He will have sources, isn't it? He'll have 1, 2, 3, 4 sources. It starts often with oral. Somebody was there and they said to you this and that happened, isn't it? Before it is written. Are you with me? Imagine you go to, there's a robbery at a mall. Before it even comes in newspapers, so the journalists will come and find who are the witnesses and they will tell you this and this happened and that. The journalist or the historian, the historian will choose what he or she puts in there. That's number one. What they include and what they exclude. Doesn't mean they're bad. Even if they exclude something, they have a reason often. They may get from a written source, but they will rearrange materials. These are all ways in which a story can change. You see? So that is one of the first things. Not going to go because of time also. I'm just saying that when we read this, as much as we read what Zainab is saying, we must ask, what is not here that she might have said? Did the people rearrange, later historians? Now again, I'm saying it doesn't mean that the people who wrote the way that they're bad. No, we don't start by ascribing evil to people. We must always have good thought. Husnul dhan, the basic thing. But all scholars have motives when they write. Okay? There are many examples. I can't go because of time. Perhaps later I can show you other examples from chronicles written in Africa. Even when people seem to write nonsense. Even when people seem to write something that is mumbo-jumbo, But if you read carefully in between, you'll see reason and rationality in there. So, this is the problem when we just quote sources. So both Sunnis and Shi'is, I've heard the story, Kufa, will just go to this and say, yeah, there's the proof. No, that's not how we understand history. One cannot just simply take a book of history and say that even if it is of the best historians like At-Tabari, for example, Al-Mas'udi, one needs to put it into conversation with other texts, with other works. Then we get a different picture. We can't just take one book. So that is the first mistake. Or let me say, the first critique that one needs to problematize. If we're going to understand the people of Kufa. Come back to that. Theology, the second point, again, there's a certain aim. And theology, what is called Kalam or Tawheed, whether Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Hindu theology, it has a certain aim that often skirts, that is often economical with the reality, as reality took place. In other words, the raw reality takes place. Theology presents it to us differently. So for example, people would look to the Quran. Of course, the Quran is it's absolute Allah's word and truth. But those who don't have an understanding, the Quran gives us an idea that the sun moves. Right? Quran gives us that idea. So some clever guy will come and see the Quran is false because we know the sun doesn't move. So how can you say the sun moves? What they don't understand is the Quran is not a book of geology or astronomy. The Quran is a different aim. So when we read theology, we must understand that even theologians have motives when they speak in a particular way, right? Like politics, like ideology. Politicians bend the truth as people. What is just called ideology. Now, this is what theology does. It could abnormalize events, and it often does that. It abnormalizes individuals, groups, because of its aim to prove, to demonstrate, or to argue a particular point in its claim that it is the truth. So Sunnis will tell it this way. Even Shi'is will tell it in this way. Akhbaris will tell it in this way. In that, human beings are just the same. Whether they're Shi'i, Sunni, Christian, Muslim, that's what we often do. And that's why we have to often question ourselves how we read history and how we speak about events. How we look at the one who differs from us. Are we fair? Are we trying to really understand, or am I just pushing my point? So as I speak to you, these are questions, things. Again, take it critically, please. So when we read events or people through theological or religious discourses, because that's how we read one another, we often, what we see is a picture of the abstract. of entities. So I don't see a Sunni anymore as just a person, or Sunni, they don't see Shi'is, they see a theological opponent. Do you see? They see ideas, but human beings are much more than ideas just in every point. Human beings have certain makeup. So what you see, what these theologies produce, and so this is the reading, for example, of the people of Kufa. This is some of those look at Shi'is. They don't see people, they don't look at the people of Kufa as just people, which should be the first beginning point, but see them as an Aqidah. I don't see Shamir. I don't see Vladimir. I see what? I see Christian theology. Okay. So what happens is that what we see are entities or gadgets of that articulate beliefs and not human beings as flesh and blood. Emotion and experience. Aspirations and hopes, because that's what we all have throughout all times. And often that informs how we act at given moments in history. Because as a human being, we are flesh and blood. We feel with emotions. We have certain experiences. We have aspirations, hopes and fears. If somebody is to say, I'll give you an example. If I say, all men are rapists, okay? And I say, Shaheed is a man, what is the conclusion? But is it true that all men are rapists? There are some men who rape, right? Not all men are rapists. So that is what is called a syllogism, right? Your major premise is wrong, therefore your conclusion, your result, it is valid in terms of fitting with the major premise and the minor premise. The major premise, namely, all men are rapists. Shaheed is a man, therefore Shaheed is a rapist. But it is not sound, because all men are not rapists. And it's true, all men are not rapists. It will be wrong for somebody. But say that to a woman who has just been raped. Can you just dismiss the syllogism like that? Because this woman's experience, this terrible, terrible experience will let that woman for some time mistrust all men or look at all men as rapists. And you can say, yeah, but I'm not a rapist. You're missing the point. Do you see? People have experienced racism. And that's what we must understand when we read people differently. In other words, people, the psychological, through theologies, through our aqidas, when you just speak our aqidas, we negate the human. We take away the human, the psychological. All these are negated. This is when we are essentialized and we dismiss our human complexities of our human nature. And we dismiss even facts. So Muslims are terrorists, isn't it? That's what you hear in the news, isn't it? That's because they've essentialized Muslims. All black Africans are corrupt. Because we've essentialized black Africans, isn't it? Or lazy, or incompetent. All white people are racist. All Jews are greedy. All Indians don't pay their workers. That is how we speak. But somebody's had a particular experience. It is wrong to essentialize that. But we need to understand, right? Certain things. So Kufa and his people have been essentialized. And therefore this view about people of Kufa, we must stand a bit back. And before all this, that, oh, Kufi, you are like that. Alright? What was Kufa? People often don't understand, what was Kufa, for example? Who were the Shia of Kufa? What is the history of this place called Kufa? This place that is lifted up outside of human history, so that we can understand a particular people who are all treacherous by nature. Kufa is a garrison town. In fact, Kufa is established by the Khalifa Umar bin al-Khattab. For all that Shi'is speak about the great status of Kufa, Kufa was founded by a Sunni ruler. And people can then go back in history and say that it's an elder town, it is formed and the angels were there and everything because the big mosque. But that doesn't tell us anything about Kufa. Alright? What is the geography of Kufa? Umar bin al-Khattab established Kufa and Basra because he didn't want the Arabs to mix with non-Arabs. He wanted, he said, it's a garrison town. When there's a military campaign, they establish a town for the soldiers, and when that war is over, then we move. But sometimes events, they leave the people who intended them for something behind, and it became a metropolis. It became a city. And exactly that. Kufa had many different peoples, but we are told the people of Kufa. Right? What was its composition like? We don't ask that question. As an urban center now. What was its spatial layout? Like take Pretoria. Do you think Pretoria was just built the way it is? No, we know that the Nationalist Party, the Afrikaans, is the particular idea of Pretoria. It remains still the majority so-called white city of South Africa. It's named after the great hero called Andries Pretorius, who so-called led them and their God in the war against those barbaric Zulus, who were just killing people. Pretoria means something, the way a city is laid out. We don't ask those questions. What were its demographics? The tribal demographics. How many supporters really were supporters of just Ali and Hussein? People call politicians for different reasons. Right? Sometimes you see, just think about yourself how politicians make different alliances. Right? The ANC will do the EFF. Yesterday you saw how Julius Malema spoke about Zuma making fun and ridiculing an old man, but they want to go drink tea with him. This is Kufa. It's not an essential nature. It's how people act. People with particular interests act. We do that. All of us do it sometimes. Some more than others. Then this is where we have to check ourselves. So what were the ideological and political trends? What was the population? How many people were in Kufa? For us to speak about Kufa the way we speak here. All of these are ignored and negated. These are important factors to think about, people. What were the security and political realities at the time for these Kufan people just to have changed? We are told that Muslim and Aqil at once each 18,000 people with him. Let's assume that's correct. But what was Kufa's total population? Do we think that all these 18,000 were like card-carrying members of Ali, like you're a card-carrying member of the ANC or the DA and said that No. People had reasons. People are not. Even we as lay people, we know what our vested interests are. All of us. And that's not wrong. That's not bad. Sometimes I come to you, I want to particular because I'm looking at my own benefit. That's fine. As long as I'm not going to harm somebody in it. But we've forgotten all those things because we have a mundane life that we've separated from what we call our so-called theological life. So the people of Kufa had fear. If 18,000 people, what was the total population? How many of these 18,000 were truly Shia? These are just questions. Think about it. What about the human propensity to change? Don't we change? We can be good one day and bad the other day, isn't it? Aren't there days that you just don't even feel like making namaz at all? Right? You just think, this is like really heavy. This happens. Sometimes don't you just feel bad and we do something, I have some bad thoughts. Sometimes I'm just greedy. I know I'm supposed to help Ruhullah there, but I don't want to give Ruhullah some of my money. I know, I'm like really stingy now. These are things that are always with us. Think about this, people of Kufa. What is the human propensity to change in a moment due to external factors? Fear, people. And that is a big thing. If you live in the Arab world and you know what leaders can do to kill you, fear. People feared. So my heart can be with Al-Hussein, but I'm not going to. These people are going to massacre my mother, my father, everyone. This is what despots do. During apartheid times, ask Al-Hajj Qasimiyya. It's easy for me to speak about apartheid now. Do you think I'd be speaking like this in 1982? No, maybe not. I don't think so. When the SB came to your house in the middle of the morning, 2 o'clock to come and fetch you. Do you see? These factors impact on us. Ubaidullah killed people. He tortured people. Just to say that the people of Kufa I just changed. These are all factors that may and played a role. When they threw Ahmad Timol from the 10th floor, what was then called John Foster Square, is now called Johannesburg Central. People were quiet after that. They knew. Those people didn't play. As I say, ask Al-Hajj Qasim in Apla forces. And those people. Those few were willing to go into exile. Those few were willing to take on the Nationalist Party. Few were willing to talk and stand up. Does it mean all those of us who were quiet were cowards? We were bad, we were evil? No, people were afraid. We must understand that fear is a natural thing. When they torture you, I had a teacher when I was in Egypt. he had a beard, like small, and he used to teach us Arabic. I knew him. And then one week he came without a beard. I said, now what happened? I was interested. He says, no, sorry man, I'm not prepared for my mother and my father to be tortured. With my beard, I immediately am a suspect. He's Egyptian, by the Egyptian police. Do you know how they torture you? One of the guys, they caught him. Or they want to catch a young guy who's in the, like say, in some of the groups, Jama'at Islamiyah. They can't catch you. They take your mother and your sisters. The one lady, mother of one of these activist boys, were taken. She went. She said to the interrogating officer, "I want to go to toilet. This is a Muslim country. You know, we have this respect, isn't it?" He said, "I'm going with you into toilet." She says, "I can't go anywhere." It's the torture, the psychological and the emotional torture. Now this had happened to the people of Kufa. For us just to call them treacherous. That's my point. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? That is what Ubaidullah bin Ziyad was doing and Yazid's forces. This is what oppressors all over the century, all a long time do. What I'm saying is in the waterboarding. See what they're doing in Guantanamo Bay. See what they did to apartheid, anti-apartheid activists. We must understand this. Many of us feared people. People would say, don't talk politics. And I understand that. Okay? My point is, let's understand and appreciate human complexities, external objective realities, informing how we act as human beings, the decision that you and I take at given moments. The ability to take decisions, to choose correctly and bravely, especially when it means one will be tortured. That is the final, that is the test. Of course there are those who are treacherous. I'll come to that. There are those who take the easy way, and that's wrong. Any which way is wrong. But let us just understand, very few others like Al-Hur bin Yazid al-Riyahi in the last moment took the correct decision. You know the woman called Tuwa who gave refuge to Muslim bin Aqil? Her son gave him over, isn't it? Again, was he evil? He was wrong, but was he evil is a different question. We can think about that. Was it his concern for what would happen to his mother if Ubaidullah bin Ziyad found out and formed his decision? Then there's the story about 18,000 people with Muslim Aqil. All these are just things that cannot even be factually established. But let's even assume it's true. Right? What was the psychology of fear among that 18,000? We told that Ibn Ziyad was mistaken for Imam Husayn. Again, you can look one or two ways. We can say it's absolute nonsense, and I'm inclined to think it's nonsense. Who is going to be able to fool people that people know Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam? But let's say it's true, then it means that is what fear did to people. And we can understand. Of course, some people did sell out, as I say. Then he said Shimr. Shimr was a Shi'i. And who was the most terrible person on the day of Ashura? Wasn't it Shimr? He says, okay. Let's assume Shimr was a Shi'i. So what? So what is Shi'i? Don't people change? The Quran al-Kareem tells us. Quran, and that is why all these people who use this, against Shi'is is because they don't read the Quran. The Quran, you know what's the beauty of the Quran, at least I understand it? The Quran hasn't got nice aphorisms. When you read Rumi and you read Buddha and all, Quran hasn't got any of those nice sayings. If you want in that flowery sayings. The Quran throws cold water into our faces. That's the beauty of the Quran. It tells us about us. Of course, we have to read between the lines. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. وَاتْلُوا عَلَيْهِمْ نَبَأَ الَّذِي آتَيْنَاهُ آيَاتِنَا. Quran says in Surah Al-A'raf, O Prophet, read to them, to the mu'mineen, the story, the real event of the person that we gave our ayat. Is a person. The Mufassirun says his name was Bal'am. He was with Nabi Musa's time. Allah had even given, some scholars say, Allah had given him Ismullah al-A'dam. When a person is Ismullah al-A'dam, it means one can do miracles. That is, of course, a Muslim belief. This was this person Allah gave him. He was so close to Allah. And it says, فَانْسَلَخَ مِنْهَا. But he violently got rid of it. فَأَتْبَعَهُ الشَّيْطَانِ. And shaitan made him to follow his path. فَكَانَ مِنَ الْغَاوِينَ. And he became astray. Allah says, وَلَوْ شِئْنَا لَرَفَعْنَاهُ بِهَا. If we wanted, we would have raised him even higher, this person. وَلَكِنَّهُ أَخْلَدَ إِلَى الْأَرْضِ. But this person thought that this earth will last forever. Right? He like أَخْلَدَ. He thought about ever living in this life. وَاتَّبَعَ هَوَاهُ. And he followed his desire. We're always challenged. It's only the Anbiya Ma'asub. You can be how close to God. That danger is always there. فَمَثَلُهُ كَمَثَلِ الْكَلْبِ إِن تَحْمِلْ عَلَيْهِ يَلْهَثْ أَوْ تَتْرُكْهُ يَلْهَثْ. Allah says the likeness of that person is the like of a dog. Not in swearing the dog how, a particular action the dog does. The dog always pants, isn't it? Whether you put weight on the dog or you don't, dog pants. So, if this person was so close to Allah, could betray Allah, what is Shimr betraying Imam Husayn? Do you see? Now, when somebody says Shimr was a Shi'i, so what? He was a Shi'i, okay. He didn't like Abu Bakr, like Umar. And that is a question for us. When we say we are Shia, we must know that just saying I'm Shia, even just believing that, it means we are always tested. And Shimr failed the test. Then you find that Shi'is now become apologetic. Right? So now we have to now say, no, Shimr. No, he was a Shi'i. Say he was a Shi'i. So what? Okay? Then we hear, for example, tell you Yazid cried when he heard of Imam Husayn. No, how can Yazid cry? No, Yazid cried. He cried. He may have cried. It's a hard thing for a Shi'i to hear. Is it possible? It's possible. You know Saddam Hussein, I saw a picture of him. He massacred 10,000 people in a day, but when he came in front of the shrine of Imam Ali, he cried. I don't think it's easy for a person like that to pretend. But it shows when people are psychopaths, sometimes that is why we have to look at ourselves. That doesn't mean Yazid wasn't wrong. You see, that's what we forget. Now, for those Sunnis saying Yazid cried, it makes suddenly Yazid a good man because they've essentialized Yazid. Instead of seeing that this was a despot who killed people, and that's how we should look at him. Now, for Shi'is to say that Yazid can't cry, didn't Allah's spirit is also in Yazid? So when Yazid would do momentarily good of act, it's because of that spirit, but that does not negate his wrong. And that is the big point, respected sisters. We are told that Abu Lahab, who the Quran condemned to Jahannam, on the day Prophet ﷺ was born, he set free a slave. They say, whether it's true or not, but just understand that on the day the Prophet is born in Jahannam, he gets a drop of milk on his blood, on his tongue. That is possible. That Abu Lahab was genuinely happy. Hitler could have cried. But the problem is when we become theological, then we just see evil. Maybe Yazid had some good in him, but that does not exonerate him from what he did. And what Shi'is often do, we as Shi'is, because we are reacting, because we are responding. So this is a psychological point that Sunnis have above us. And our problem is what informs our response, approach to our response. And saying, yes, okay, so he was. But go back to Quran and say that does not become proof of what Shia has and what the movement Shia has. So I just wanted to think us about this, respected brothers and sisters, as how we understand anything throughout life, not only Karbala per se. So next time when we just think about the people of Kufa, spare them a thought. They were not evil. They were not simply treacherous. Think when you are tortured. Think when somebody comes into your house and you want to protect your children, as a mother would do at all costs. You may do things that you people say that I needed to protect my children. Of course, and this is the beauty in the end. And those 72, the mu'min is that one who's going to cross the boundary. Says, La akhaf illallah. Now you can do what you like. And that is where we hope Allah will take us and we will take ourselves with Allah's tawfiq. Those 72 were the people who feared, but who said, we're going to cross that Rubicon. We're going to cross that boundary. We are not afraid. Those who faced the apartheid police, they were few. That is the question. Therefore, we are called in the end to say, there's a line. Are we going to stand back? So therefore, we will not be the best of people. The Quran says, فَضَّلَ اللَّهُ الْمُجَاهِدِينَ عَلَى الْقَاعِدِينَ دَرَجَةً. Allah prefers those who go forth in the path of Allah a degree above those who sit back. Allah is not saying those who sit back are bad. In fact, He will reward them because they had at least Iman. Other night, Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah was speaking, for example, about this LGBTQ. We're in a war now, people. There are certain things that we're going to have to take decisions. If our children are at schools and the teachers will have to stand up. We cannot just condemn it. These people are in a war with this LGBTQI. We'll have to say, no, our children are not going to listen to that lesson in class. And we can choose not to. Because it's a war. Just an example. There's a war now out. That is, Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah said, that is, we are now Husayn and that's the Yazid now. We have to think about these things. But let's come to that most beautiful person, Abil Fadl al-Abbas alayhi salam. Ya Ilahi. Min al-mu'minina rijalun sadaqu ma ahadullah alayhi. Among believers are those who are truthful to the covenant they made with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ قَضَى نَحْبَهُمْ. There are those who have given their lives. وَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ يَنْتَظِرُ. And those who are waiting, وَمَا بَدَّلُوا تَبْدِيلًا. They will not change like Shimar. They will be afraid, but they will be killed 70 times, like Muslim ibn al-Sajjad. Like Habib ibn al-Madahir. Like Joan, who said to Imam Husayn, I will not leave you at the moment of difficulty. Like the young boy whose mother sent him to go and stand with Imam al-Husayn. Imam Husayn alayhi salam said, this boy's father just been killed. Maybe his mother would not like him to go forward. And he said to Imam Husayn, no, my mother said, she commanded me. What a beautiful mother. She said, go, go, go. I will not forgive you if you do not go and fight and defend the Imam. These people. Those people who did not fear, who loved Allah. Like Al-Hur bin Yazid al-Riyah, like Zuhair ibn Qayn, like Abis and Shawdab, and Abdullah bin Sa'id al-Hanafi and all the other martyrs. And Qasim went forward, and Ali Akbar, when he had no more water and he was so thirsty and the thirst was killing him, and his father came back. And Al-Husayn put his tongue out and said, suck on my tongue, my son. Is there any more beautiful love between a parent and a child than this? This is the highest manifestation of love. And Qasim and Ali Akbar takes the tongue of his father and he sucks his father, but your tongue is drier than mine. But this supreme act of love, and Al-Husayn takes his ring and says, suck on this ring, my son. And the son goes forward and says, Father, I'm going to meet my grandfather now. Then it's Al-Abbas. Who's Al-Abbas? Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas alayhi salam. Who've been standing patiently. He couldn't fight because he's the flag bearer. And Al-Abbas is the son of Ali. He's so brave. Every time he wants to go and fight, he wants to go and fight to defend the children and the women and the other men. And Imam al-Husayn tells him, no, Al-Abbas, you can't go. You're my flag bearer. And finally, he says, go and take water. The children are asking, Pani, they want water. Ya Amu Abbas, Al-Moy, we want water, they say to him. And he goes forward. Who is Al-Abbas? What is this one? كانت عملية السقي هويته, to pour water. That was the most revolutionary act, to pour water to those who are thirsty. It was the greatest act of love to pour water. It was like his habit, it was like his hobby. فأصبحت رسالته, and then it became his message. وفي سبيلها تمت شهادته, and in the path of that of pouring water, the supreme act of love, of complete sacrifice to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he achieved martyrdom. He got shahada in that. لَقَدْ مَثَّلَ كُلَّ الْفَضَائِلِ, he represented all virtues that was no, وَتَمَثَّلَتْ كُلُّ الْفَضَائِلِ فِيهِ, and all virtues were embodied in Al-Abbas. وَزَادَتْ فِي الْقِيَمِ قِيمَةٌ جَدِيدَةٌ, and from that day, a new value came that never existed before. This value, ismuha Al-Abbas, its name was Al-Abbas. So Al-Abbas goes forward, and he goes forward to fight, and at one stage we know he breaks through to you. He says, we are told the stories, وَاشْتَدَّ الْعَطَشُ بِالْحُسَيْنِ. The thirst was so much for Imam Husayn alayhi salam. And Al-Abbas says, لَا أَرْهَبْ الْمَوْتَ إِذَا الْمَوْتَ رَقَى. He says, I do not fear death if death comes. حَتَّى أُوَارِ فِي الْمَصَالِ. Even I'm very deep into the earth, I do not fear. Nafsi li nafsil Mustafa atur. My soul belongs to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam al-Mustafa. He says, and then when he gets to the water, he takes the water. At one stage he wants to drink and he has the water. It would have been for wrong for Abbas to drink water, at least to give him some strength, because he too is dying of thirst. And he says to his soul, Ya nafsi huni. Oh my soul, you will not be if you live and Hussein doesn't live, he says. And then he of course gets the water and he goes back. And they gang up on him from all directions and from all sides. And they cut off his right hand. And he takes the bag in his left. He says, Wallahi in qata'atum yamini, by Allah, if you cut down my right hand, inni uhami abadan an dini, I will always protect and stand firm for my religion. And he goes, and Zayd bin Ruqad comes from the other side and they cut off his left hand. And and at that moment before, of course, he has to fight, and he puts the water bag in his mouth. And then what the enemies do, they fire an arrow, they shoot an arrow and it goes into the bag. And that is Al-Abbas could lose his right and his left hand. What will he tell the children now of Karbala? I've got no water anymore. And finally, when he falls off his horse, what do you say? When you fall with your hands down to protect your face, but he falls on his face because he has no hands. Ya Ilahi. He says, Inni uhami abadan an dini, always protect my imam in sadiq al-yaqini. To stand in the favor and the protection of an imam who is true in his yaqeen. Najlun nabi tahir al-amini. He's the offspring of the pure prophet. And when he's killed, when Al-Abbas is killed, Imam Husayn alayhi salam says, Al-ana in kasaradari. Now my back has been broken. Imam Husayn says, now that Abu al-Fadl Abbas is no longer, my back has been broken. وَقَلَّتْ حِيلَتِي. I don't know what to do. This was the love between Al-Imam al-Husayn and Al-Abbas. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. فَسَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَيَّ مُنْقَلَبٍ يَنْقَلِبُونَ.
Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein.